Hello and welcome to Kindred Academy, the show that deals with all things Vampire the Masquerade, 5th edition. I'm Peter.
And I'm Carlos, and on today's lesson, character creation.
Which is one of our favourite things. Now, as you know, there is no one true way to create a character, and I'm sure you've all got your own ways of approaching it. There are also very, very good sections in the core book that will help you to do this. We would also like to offer 4 possible approaches of our own to give you different ways in to the character creation process.
And these are approaches that have worked with us in the past, either for creating our characters or coming up with new character ideas. So I hope you find something useful in these lines.
So the first approach we're going to use is the mortal first approach. So this is where you start by creating a real person in the real world and worry about everything else afterwards. And one of the strengths of this approach is that when you've created a person and fleshed them out, then you have a much better sense of how they would react to being turned into a vampire, whether it would be like their dream come true or their worst nightmare. If we give an example for creating someone from the real world, let's pick one of the shining stars of humanity, one of our tech ghouls, the Dilly. Now the Dilly is quite hard to define simply because so little is actually known about him.
Very mysterious guy.
He is very mysterious, but we do know that he never ever gets stressed when we are getting everything set up for Blood on the Thames, so we can assume that he has a very high composure.
Oh, and no matter how much we mess with him, he never loses his cool, so probably high resolve as well.
And he seems to know everything there is to know about computers, software, tech, cameras, colouring, so we can assume a high technology with multiple specialties.
Yeah, but we have heard these rumor, has not been confirmed, that he's probably a little bit on the clumsy side, so maybe a lower than average dexterity to begin with.
Yeah, but don't tell anyone. That's a special secret. So the second approach that we'd like to offer towards you is creating your vampire or the theme first. So thinking about what it is you want to explore in the game first.
So if you already have a concept of a specific type of vampire you want to play, not the mortal they were before, but who they are now after living for some years or decades or even centuries, then this is the approach to go with.
So kind of coming at it from the opposite angle. But the key thing here really is maybe you want to look at what it's like to be a blood addict. Maybe you want a character that's going to be exploring the politics of the vampire world, but you're picking your thing first and then saying, what's the best character to explore that bit of the world that I want to play with?
So one example of this would be the character I created for Blood on the Thames, Moses. So Moses was created with the idea of losing your humanity as a concept. So I went here for a theme. I didn't have a specific idea of the mortal he was until I started exploring the alternatives of why would he react the way he does and what did he like before he was embraced? How did the embrace change him? How it affects his humanity? How being cut off from his mortal life would affect his psyche? So this is sort of the basis in which you build your character around.
So it may be that you're coming to Vampire and actually you don't have an idea about the theme and you don't have an idea about the mortal you want to play either. So our third approach is clan first.
And this is probably the most common type of character creation process everybody encounters when they start playing Vampire the Masquerade. Someone gets the book, you start reading through it, see the rules, see the setting, and then you read the clans. And they are there, all of these bloodlines with their particular blessings and curses. And that is the best way to understand what is it that being a vampire means in this game.
Yeah, and each clan will have a number of suggested sort of archetypes or stereotypes of ways they might go, which might inspire you. It might be that their clan bane inspires you or something else. So an example of this is the character I play in Blood on the Thames, Benjamin. He's a Malkavian, which is the clan that deals with kind of delusion and visions and madness. And I had a particular delusion that I wanted to play with, and that was my starter point. And once I knew that, I could then say, okay, what will be a fun mortal to play with that? And then also, what kind of vampire, what kind of person is he going to be now that will work best with that?
The fourth approach is that of the cool concept. Just something that you would really like to play, but it's not tied to any particular mortal or kindred or clan. It can be from any clan, or doesn't explore any theme itself, but it's something that you would really like to play, and you can build your character around that.
Basically, vampires are cool. And sometimes you don't want to do anything clever, you just want to play someone cool. So it's choosing something that you feel would be, like, that you enjoy most about being a vampire, and then running with that.
So for example, to use this character creation approach, let's say you want to create a super crack driver, someone who is amazing behind the wheel. Maybe you were inspired by one of the famous movies that are really speedy and really angry, but it doesn't matter if he was a getaway driver from a group of bank robbers. He's just super awesome behind the wheel. And now you are immortal and have supernatural reflexes and can react to all of these situations.
And that will then define not only your stats and skills, but also the supernatural powers that you take as well. So at this point, you've probably got a fair idea of what your character is good and bad at and the kind of things they can do. You now need to decide what their beliefs are. And based on that, there is a cool mechanic that V5 introduces called convictions.
So on our last lesson, we talked about chronicle tenets and the guidelines that the morality compass was aiming towards when you were playing the game. Convictions are your individual and personal beliefs, your character's core approaches to on life.
And this can be important because sometimes you want to play a character that goes against the world's morality, but still has a chance of surviving. So for example, if my character believes that family must be protected at all costs, and that is their conviction, but I'm in a campaign where I'm not allowed to murder people without getting stains on my soul, what will happen is if my family is threatened and I kill someone to protect my family, I'll still get the stains, but because of my conviction, those stains will be lessened because my character genuinely believes they're doing the right thing.
And convictions are tied to touchstones, and touchstones are mortals that represent those convictions and are sometimes the embodiment of them. Regardless of who they are as a whole, as an individual, they might be the best person in the world or someone with genuine and very human shortcomings. When you anchor your beliefs in that person, you are able to experience humanity through that person.
Yeah, because it's worth noting that although you may have believed these things in character when they were alive, now that you're a walking corpse, you can't hold those beliefs in yourself anymore. You have to have them externally in a human being, a living human being. So if something happens to that person, if they suddenly change their beliefs about the world and are no longer useful to you in that way, or if they're killed or hurt or something like that, it can have dramatic effects on your vampire. So storytellers will want to know all about these touchstones because they're fuel for the chronicle. So one of the other new additions to V5 is something called a predator type, and you'll need to decide that for your character. And this is basically, what's your favorite way of getting hold of blood?
And when you are at the apex predator, at the top of the food chain, it makes sense to have a route, something that feels right, a way to hunt and feed that brings you comfort because it is the most successful approach you have. And this is what the predator type explores. How do you go about feeding when the beast is starting to take over?
Yes. And each predator type will come with its own advantages and disadvantages that will be added to your character sheet, along with, excitingly, a discipline dot, which is normally connected to the predator type rather than to your character's clan. So this means it's a way sometimes to get an extra little trick up your sleeve that a member of your clan wouldn't normally have, which can be quite interesting.
And the main element of the predator type is the actual flavor of it. Are you someone who feeds some people while they're sleeping in their house and you break in? Or are you a social butterfly that goes around parties or nightclubs seducing potential victims to feed upon? And that also speaks very lightly about the psychology of your character and how they approach every single night in their own lives.
Something that we feel is sometimes underrated by people is the background section of the character. But this is actually a place for you to get hooks into the world and into the story.
So when you're creating your character, you're given a certain number of points to distribute amongst advantages and backgrounds. And yes, they can be used to make your character exceptionally good looking or maybe very wealthy, but also to provide you with allies or contacts or friends, both mortal and vampires. Maybe you want to have some sort of influence in the human society. Maybe your character is a little bit famous. And all of those little details are there for the taking.
And each of the advantages is also mirrored with a disadvantage. And these can also be fun to play with. So rather than being wealthy, you can be very, very poor. Rather than having a really cool haven to stay with, it might be you're just sleeping under a bridge every night. And players sometimes don't like to take disadvantages for their character because they want their character to be as kind of awesome as possible. But I would say to you, often disadvantages are great sources of plot for your character, so don't be shy.
And there are many types of disadvantages that you can go for. You have to take some flaws as you create your character, as per character creation rules in the book. But also, you have the ability to develop your character psychology and how they deal with those obstacles. Given them a little bit of free plot, even if it's supernatural in kind, is always interesting.
Yeah, and there's a nice section on mythic flaws and advantages as well, because there's a lot of folklore around vampires that doesn't normally apply to characters in Vampire the Masquerade. However, if you really, really want to suffer when someone throws holy water at you, you can.
Yeah, or all have being repelled by garlic, not being able to enter a threshold without being invited. Those little things that are part of what is now the vampire myth are right there for the taking, and you can have your character don't choose not crossing running waters on like London. Other than that, it's very, very cool to have.
And lastly, and often one of the player's favourite things to think about, is what disciplines you have. What are the supernatural powers that your vampire possesses that allow them to do all the cool tricks you've read about or seen in the films?
And disciplines are effectively the powers of the blood that will give you either superhuman strength or speed, the ability to mesmerize mortals or other vampires, to dominate their will, to talk to animals or summon the beast of the night. There are many different disciplines, and each clan, as part of their blessings, as part of the strength of their clan, have access to 3 of them in which they excel.
And disciplines and clans are such rich topics that we're not going to be able to cover them in detail here, but fear not, because clans will be the subject of our next lesson.
In the meantime, we got homework for you. Now, we have discussed the character creation process, and we touched upon convictions. So let us know on the comments below, what convictions would you like to play in your characters, or have you played, and how have they impacted in the Chronicle? In the meantime, make sure to like and subscribe, hit that bell notification, and we will see you on the next lesson. Bye.
Bye. Can I talk about halflings?
Please.
Anyway, like, no!